The cardboard box slipped from Marcus Webb's hands, crashing onto the sidewalk and spilling his daughter's toys across the cracked pavement. A pink stuffed elephant rolled into the gutter, its button eyes staring up at him like an accusation. Marcus stood frozen on the curb, watching 7 years of struggling, surviving, and slowly drowning in this city scatter at his feet. "Daddy, Mr. Snuggles." His 5-year-old daughter Lily's voice cracked with panic as she scrambled to rescue the elephant from the dirty water. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her, pulling her small body against his chest as she clutched the soaked toy. "It's okay, baby. We'll clean him up. He'll be good as new." The lie tasted bitter on his tongue. Nothing had been good as new for a long time. The moving truck idled behind them, half-packed with everything they owned, which wasn't much. In 3 hours, they'd leave Boston forever. Marcus had already signed the lease on a tiny apartment back in his hometown of Cedar Falls, already arranged for Lily to start at the elementary school he'd attended as a boy. It was defeat, pure and simple, but at least in Cedar Falls his sister could help with childcare. At least the rent wouldn't devour every penny he earned. At least he wouldn't have to choose between electricity and groceries anymore. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb, so close that Marcus instinctively pulled Lily back. The window rolled down with an expensive whisper, revealing a man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything in a single glance. "You're blocking the loading zone," the man said, his voice carrying the casual authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. Of course he was. Of course, on this day of all days, he'd managed to inconvenience someone who probably made more in an hour than Marcus had made all year. "Sorry. Give me 2 minutes and we'll be gone." "Wait." The man's eyes had moved to Lily, who was trying to wring water from Mr. Snuggles' fur, her small face scrunched in concentration. "Is that child wearing a Riverside Academy uniform?" Marcus looked down at Lily's navy jumper, still crisp despite everything. He'd bought it secondhand but had it dry cleaned for her first week of kindergarten. She'd been so proud, twirling in front of their apartment's cracked mirror. That had been 3 months ago, before everything fell apart. "She was enrolled there," Marcus said quietly. "Not anymore." The man stepped out of the Mercedes. He was tall, immaculately dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Marcus's truck. "Riverside Academy is the finest private school in Boston. Why would you withdraw her?" The question hung in the air like an indictment. Marcus felt every failure of the past year pressing down on his shoulders. "Because I can't afford it. Because her mother died and left me with medical bills that would choke a horse. Because I lost my job when I missed too much work sitting at her bedside. Because I've been driving for a ride-share service and working overnight warehouse shifts and it's still not enough. Because I'm drowning and I need to get my daughter somewhere safe before I go under completely." The words poured out, raw and unfiltered. "Is that enough detail for you?" Lily had gone still against his leg, and Marcus immediately regretted his outburst. He never talked about their struggles in front of her. He never let her see him break. But the man didn't recoil. Instead, his expression softened in a way that made him look suddenly human. "My name is Richard Castellano. I'm on the board at Riverside Academy." He paused, his gaze moving from Marcus to Lily and back again. "And 35 years ago, I was standing exactly where you are now." Marcus blinked. Richard Castellano. Even he recognized that name. Castellano Industries owned half the commercial real estate in Boston and had just made headlines for a massive philanthropic initiative. "My wife died when my son was 4, Richard continued, his voice quiet. "Cancer. It took everything we had and then kept taking. I was working 3 jobs, sleeping in my car between shifts, feeding him from food pantries. I was packing to leave the city when someone stopped to help me. Someone who saw a desperate father and decided to give him a chance instead of driving past." Marcus's throat tightened. He wanted to speak but couldn't find words. How old is your daughter? 5. She just turned 5 in August. Richard nodded slowly. What did you do before the rideshare and warehouse work? I was an accountant. Junior associate at Pritchard & Sons. I was good at it. Really good. But when Sarah got sick, I couldn't maintain the hours. They let me go. And you haven't found another position? Marcus laughed, the sound hollow. Have you tried job hunting when you have a preschooler and no childcare? When you have to explain employment gaps? When you're so tired you can barely think straight? He shook his head. I'm not complaining. I knew what I signed up for when Sarah and I had Lily. I just didn't expect to be doing it alone. Richard was quiet for a long moment, studying Marcus with an intensity that made him want to squirm. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Jennifer, it's Richard. I need you to cancel my afternoon. Something's come up. He paused. No, it's important. I'll explain later. He hung up and looked at Marcus. I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to really think before you answer. If I could solve your immediate problems, give you a real chance to build a life here, would you take it? Or have you already given up on Boston? Marcus looked down at Lily, who was watching Richard with wide, curious eyes. She loved her kindergarten class. She'd made friends. She'd come home every day chattering about what she'd learned, her face bright with excitement. And he was about to rip her away from all of it because he couldn't make it work. I haven't given up, Marcus said softly. I'm just out of options. Then let me give you one. Richard gestured toward the Mercedes. Get in the car. Both of you. Leave the truck here for an hour. I want to show you something. Every instinct Marcus had screamed that this was insane. You didn't get into strange cars with your daughter, no matter who the person claimed to be. But something in Richard's face, a kind of weary compassion, made Marcus hesitate. Why would you do this? Marcus asked. You don't know us. Because someone did it for me, Richard said simply. Because I know exactly what it feels like to believe the world has crushed you and there's no way back up. And because that little girl deserves better than watching her father break himself trying to stay afloat. Marcus made a decision that would either save them or prove he'd lost his mind entirely. Okay. The Mercedes smelled like leather and possibility. Lily sat between them in the back seat, still clutching Mr. Snuggles, her eyes wide as she took in the pristine interior. Richard gave an address to his driver, and they pulled smoothly into Boston traffic. Where are we going? Marcus asked. To meet someone who needs exactly what you have to offer. They drove through downtown, past the gleaming office buildings where Marcus had once imagined building a career. The Mercedes pulled up in front of a modern tower, all glass and steel reaching toward a slate-gray sky. Richard led them inside, through a lobby that made Marcus acutely aware of his worn jeans and faded jacket, to a bank of elevators. On the 23rd floor, they entered an office suite with Castellano Financial Services etched on glass doors. A woman in her 40s looked up from her desk, surprise flickering across her face when she saw Richard with Marcus and Lily in tow. Mr. Castellano, your 2 o'clock is waiting in the conference room. Tell him I'll be another 10 minutes. Jennifer, this is Marcus Webb and his daughter Lily. Marcus, this is Jennifer Park, our Chief Operating Officer and the person who actually runs this company while I take credit for her work. Jennifer's professional smile turned genuine. He's being modest. He still manages to meddle in everything. Richard led them to a spacious office overlooking the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Boston like a painting, the kind of view Marcus had only seen in movies. Richard gestured for them to sit and settled behind his desk. I'm going to be direct because you don't have time to waste, Richard said. I need a senior accountant. My previous one just left to start his own firm, and we've been drowning in applications from overqualified people who want the prestige of working here. But not one of them has given me a reason to care. Not